Hello, 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 Sean Ferrick here, and I am here to talk to you today about characters who may have faded slightly from your memory when they should have been front and centre. That's right, I'm Sean Ferrick for Who Culture, and here are 10 Doctor Who characters more important than you realised. Number 10. Bill's housemate, Harry. As featured in Series 10's Knock Knock, Bill's housemate Harry seemed like a nice enough young man who was destined to be bumped off by David Suchet's creepy landlord. It's a good job that Harry survives his ordeal in the end, because an old friend of the Doctor's would never have forgiven him. That's because writer Mike Bartlett revealed to Doctor Who magazine that it was his intention to make Harry the grandson of 4th Doctor companion Harry Sullivan. The line was ultimately cut from the finished script, making it hard to figure out if this was the same grandfather who tried to steal a bit of the Great Wall of China with his boyfriend. Regardless, it adds a completely new dimension to the story, as the Doctor and young Harry teaming up now has a more emotional resonance in retrospect. He gets quite a horrific death, being devoured by the Dryads after putting his foot through a rickety step. Imagine the 12th Doctor having to pay a visit to his old pal Harry Sullivan to inform him about his grandson. Thankfully, the Doctor and Bill convince Eliza to end the charade that she and her son have been maintaining, reconstituting all of Bill's friends and saving the Doctor from a very awkward conversation. Number 9. Duggan. City of Death's Duggan is one of those great Doctor Who supporting characters who deserve to become a full-time companion. His punch first, ask questions later attitude was a perfect counterpoint to the intellectual and ponderous 4th Doctor and Romana 2. In fact, it's mind-boggling that Big Finish hasn't reunited Tom Chadman and Tom Baker for adventures with a random collection of classic monsters. As well as being a perfect companion material, this blunt instrument of a detective is also the most important person in creation. At the very end of City of Death, Duggan knocks the villain Scareth out on Earth 400 million years ago. This beautifully timed punch is enough to ensure that Scareth's ship still explodes, providing the spark that will eventually create all life on Earth. The solution to the complicated time travel plot, being a simple punch to the jaw, is a sort of comic juxtaposition that makes Doctor Who so unique. And because writer Douglas Adams throws in about 10 brilliant story ideas into each of his scripts, it's easy to miss just how important Duggan is to the entire planet. Number 8. Lorna Bucket. Lorna Bucket is responsible for giving Melody Pond her badass alter ego River Song. While it's a literal translation of Melody's name in the language of Lorna's people, it's that language that ultimately started all this trouble in the first place. When the Doctor saved young Lorna and her fellow inhabitants of the Gamma Forests from a terrifying monster, the term Doctor became a word for a great warrior. It's this warrior, this mythical force, that Madame Kovarian was training the young Melody Pond to destroy once and for all. Lorna realised that the nuances of language are important a bit too late, and was tragically killed trying to help the Doctor and his friends at the Battle of Demon's Run. In a heartbreaking moment while Lorna is dying, the Doctor thanks her for helping him and promises he remembers their earlier adventure in the Gamma Forests. Which is a bit of a lie because he has no idea who she was. Sure, the complexities of time travel means they might not have met yet, but he does infer to Madame Vastra that they may well have met already and he may have forgotten her. How on earth do you forget a name like Lorna Bucket? She gave your wife her name too. Show some respect for crying out loud. Plus, an extra note, it's very hard to forget Christina Chong, even when she's dressed up in her security best on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Number 7. Judson and Millington. The history of LGBTQ+ representation in Doctor Who pre-2005 is barely worth mentioning. However, it's worth taking a look at Classic Who's final year for how the show was trying to push forward a positive message from within the confines of family entertainment. Writer Rona Munro has said that the relationship between Ace and Kara in the Classic Who's final story Survival had a lesbian subtext to it. This raises the possibility that Ace is technically Doctor Who's first LGBTQ+ companion. However, the first LGBTQ+ character of note in Doctor Who were featured earlier in the same season, in The Curse of Fenric. Writer Ian Briggs has said that Alan Turing inspired Judson. The wheelchair was effectively a metaphor for society's suppression of Judson's true sexual identity. Briggs expanded on this idea in his novelization The Curse of Fenric, published a year later. The book recounts how the young Commander Millington had fallen in love with Judson at boarding school and became jealous when his affections were unrequited. This rejection manifested in the accident on the rugby pitch that left Judson in a wheelchair, and Millington racked with guilt for the rest of their lives. Number 6. The MOXX of BALHOON. Cast your minds back to 2005. Doctor Who was about to relaunch on BBC One, starring Christopher Eccleston and Billie Piper. Earlier that year, Doctor Who magazine had a radical redesign to celebrate and to better reflect the flashy new era of the show. With only 23 days left to go until Doctor Who's highly anticipated return, and with fan expectations at a fever pitch, who did Doctor Who magazine choose as a cover star for their 3rd of March 2005 issue? Only the MOXX of Balhoon, of course, under the headline Blue Meanie. MOXX was the very first new Doctor Who monster to grace the cover of Doctor Who magazine, and is therefore a hugely important figure in the history of the show. It was a bold choice, but it was also kind of perfect. Nobody had a clue what the MOXX of Balhoon was, or how they would factor into the new series. Would they be a big bad, a new alien friend of the 9th Doctor, or would they be a delegate who gets a few lines of dialogue and is never seen again? Fans of a certain age will always have a fondness for the MOXX of Balhoon, because in a way he encapsulates that breathless excitement of March 2005 and the moment that Doctor Who changed forever. Number 5. The Policeman. This list could be doubled if it included the weird and wonderful information revealed about seemingly minor Doctor Who characters in expanded media. Making just one exception in that case, it's worth looking at the mad information revealed about the very first character seen in Doctor Who, the policeman who patrols Totter's Lane in the very first scene ever broadcast. Originally played by Fred Rawlings in the failed pilot, he was replaced by Reg Cranfield in the final episode, making him the first Doctor Who character to regenerate. And if that's not enough, expanded media reveals some fascinating information about the seemingly ordinary copper. An audio drama entitled The Last Day at Work establishes that this policeman was Constable Bernard Whittam, an extension of the TARDIS's chameleon circuit that became independent and sentient after the Doctor made a swift getaway in an unearthly child, generating his own parents and a wife. The second Doctor encounters Bernard 5 years later and has to deactivate the whole Whittam family. Who knew that the TARDIS's chameleon circuit was that powerful? It certainly makes you view that very first scene in a completely different light. Number 4. Adric. Poor Matthew Waterhouse. He just can't catch a break. Sworn at by Tom Baker on his first day on the job, teased by his co-stars, sick in a bush while filming Castrovalva. He didn't even get the distinction of being the first Doctor Who companion to die horribly. That honour goes to Katarina, who was blown out of an airlock after only 5 minutes in the TARDIS. However, Adric is actually the most important Doctor Who companion of all time, from an in-universe perspective at least. After all, he single-handedly saved humanity twice, yes, twice in Earthshock. Firstly, he saves the Galactic Conference by sending the freighter back in time before it can land on top of their heads. Of course, the 5th Doctor tries to put the poor kid down by suggesting he's going to nullify Earth's existence entirely. Still, Adric makes more adjustments, eventually ploughing into the Earth and wiping out the dinosaurs. Now ask yourself this: if Adric hadn't crashed a freighter full of Cybermen into prehistoric Earth, would we have evolved the ability to create this list? Exactly, boy's a hero. Number 3. Mr. Copper. In a notorious and hilariously bad-tempered interview with Doctor Who magazine's Benjamin Cook, the late Clive Swift, who played Mr. Copper in Voyage of the Damned, said that there were much bigger things than this Who business. Now that may well be true, but his character is a surprisingly significant figure in this apparently unimportant and tedious world of Doctor Who. The epic 2-part finale to David Tennant's final full series revealed that Mr. Copper invented the subwave network. The subwave network, if you remember, was the technology used to root out anybody with a connection to the 10th Doctor. It was this technology that disgraced former Prime Minister Harriet Jones used to contact the Doctor in the TARDIS. Without Mr. Copper's invention, the Doctor might never have found where the Daleks had taken the Earth and the other stolen planets used to power Davros's reality bomb. Mr. Copper effectively saved reality itself, making Clive Swift's character one of the most important in all of Doctor Who. Pretty hilarious retort to Swift's notoriously grumpy Doctor Who magazine interview. Number 2. GLYN Williams. Earl Cameron was the second black actor to have a speaking role in Doctor Who. Given that this was in 1966, 3 years after the show first started, it's a slightly uncomfortable statistic. It's made even worse by the fact that Doctor Who's first black actor with a speaking role, Elroy Josephs in The Smugglers, is a superstitious and idiotic henchman. Thankfully, Earl Cameron had a much more impactful part to play, especially given the timing of his Doctor Who appearance as astronaut GLYN Williams in The 10th Planet. When the serial started in October 1966, Star Trek The Original original series had been airing for a month in the States. Famously, Star Trek featured Nichelle Nichols as the hugely positive role model for African-American viewers because the character of Lieutenant Nyota Uhura proved that they made it into space. Star Trek wouldn't air on UK screens until after Patrick Troughton departed the role of the Doctor in 1969. However, GLYN Williams was also a hugely positive portrayal of a heroic black space hero who's tragically killed while trying to escape the gravitational pull of Mondas. Despite Williams' tragic end, it's a subtly progressive bit of casting that represents a glimmer of hope for the future of humanity. Number 1. Vincent van Gogh. On paper, Richard Curtis's Vincent and the Doctor is just another celebrity historical in the Russell T Davies mold. The Doctor and Amy travel back in time to solve a mystery and meet a famous historical figure who helps them save the day. But Vincent and the Doctor is so much more than that. It's the most explicit, profound treatment of mental health in Doctor Who to date. Van Gogh's depression and lack of recognition in his lifetime are heartbreaking, and the fact that seeing a future exhibition of his work isn't enough to magically banish his demons is a brave move. It was also the right move to have the desired impact on the episode's viewers. Curtis wrote his one and only Doctor Who story as a means to pay tribute to his sister Bindi, who tragically took her own life a few years earlier. The fact that Vincent's own suicide is something that not even a great hero like the Doctor can solve was a powerful statement about how not everything can be fixed, but that life's good experiences nonetheless count for something. Vincent and the Doctor is an episode that has continued to provide a source of comfort for a great many Doctor Who fans in similar positions. Actor Tony Curran has previously revealed that fans have reached out to him to say that the episode has given them hope while they've experienced depression. It speaks to the power of this episode and to Doctor Who as a whole. That's everything now for our list. Thank you very much to Mark Donaldson, who originally wrote this article. Make sure to go and check it over on What Culture. If you want more Doctor Who videos, why don't you go and check our channel on YouTube? You can see videos like 10 Doctor Who mysteries that will never be answered. You're all awesome. Make sure that until I talk to you again, keep things wibbly wobbly, look after yourselves, and most importantly, be kind. Thanks so much.